Workshop. Appreciate you being here. I know we have several who are watching with us online. Chad Landman is going to be doing the seminar for us today. Chad is the education minister over at the Raymere Church of Christ, and he is the unofficial tech expert in the Brotherhood. And so, about 3 years ago in March, whenever many congregations are going to live stream, Chad's phone was being blown up from congregations all over the country, including here. And Chad actually came and reconfigured our sound system and actually helped us get equipment so we could live stream and stuff like that. So Chad's a dear friend of mine. He's extremely smart when it comes to technology, but as a parent, he's the parent of three boys. And so he knows this from a practical standpoint and this is about his 80th seminar in teaching parents how to be a digital parent, how to be a better digital parent. We might not think of ourselves as being digital parents, but if you have children who have access to tablets or cell phones or computers, you're a digital parent. You may be a good one or a bad one, and this seminar is going to help us to be a better one. And so we appreciate Chad and his expertise in this. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you so much, Isaac. I really appreciate the invitation to come out, and I really appreciate everybody being here and sacrificing your Sunday afternoon nap, or at least in part, to be here, because we all deserve, after last night losing an hour's sleep, deserve that Sunday afternoon nap this week. So every one of y'all are like, yeah, we're here, we're sacrificing that. So I do want to make a plug before we get started. I do have a YouTube channel. It's by the same name, Digital Parenting Workshop. So if you want to go there, I don't do weekly videos necessarily, because who has time for that? But I do them when I can, and there's about a dozen videos up there now. A lot of what you will hear today is going to be broken up into bite-sized chunks on those videos, and so feel free to share all of that kind of stuff, and there will be new content as I think about different things that come up. But I don't make any money off of that, and I don't do anything. That's just all free, so just go ahead and hit the subscribe button like they always tell you on YouTube, I guess, and go there and check some of that stuff out as well. You can always go to my website. I'm going to reference that several times today, digitalparentingworkshop.com. Up until about August of last year, I didn't even have a proper website for the workshop. I had done almost 70 workshops at that point and had not had a proper website for it. And so I'm really appreciative of that, and I'm able to share all my resources there and have it in one kind of central spot. And so if you've got any questions, if you've got anything to add, if you've got a link you want to add to that, just email me or get in contact with me on that website. I'd love to hear from you about that. So we are going to talk a little bit about making mistakes. Y'all remember Vegas Vacation? Y'all see that movie? Of course, we've all probably seen that movie. Remember that part where he's walking through the Hoover Dam there? And he sees the little thing like spewing a little water, and he says, I'm going to plug this hole, and he chews some gum and he puts it on there. And then he sees another spout pop off at the top, and then he chews. So he's chewing more gum, and he's trying to plug that hole, and he's chewing more gum, and he's trying to plug this hole, and he sees all these different things. That's kind of how it feels sometimes being a parent, doesn't it? You get one thing taken care of, and then you've got this other thing with maybe another child. You've got this issue. You've got this issue. Being a digital parent, when you compound all that and layer all that together with the technology that we've got in our hands, that our kids have access to, it is kind of wild and crazy. I'm here to tell you that as a parent, it is okay to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make plenty of mistakes, okay? And so when we think about that idea, moving forward, it is okay to learn. You are not a perfect parent, and this is more of a parenting workshop that has digital technology attached to it rather than a digital parenting workshop, honestly. We're going to get into some of that technical stuff in session 2 and 3. So just to tell you a little bit about where we're going, in this session, this is going to be the only session where I kind of talk the whole time, and the rest of the sessions are going to rely on discussion from you. The next session, this session was going to be how to be a better digital parent. The second session is going to be about social media, its impact on us as adults, what kind of impacts that it's having on our children, on our middle schoolers, on our high schoolers. And then that third session that we're going to have right before evening services here tonight is going to be how to control the devices in your home. That's going to be the one where I talk about the apps and the services and the settings and the different things that you should be watching out for. That's going to be where the rubber meets the road. And so again, I really do appreciate you being here, and I will attempt to keep you awake this afternoon. This is a parenting issue much more than it is a technology issue. Now, what do I mean by that? I think sometimes we like to look at these phones and we like to say, this technology is awful and it's corrupting our kids. This technology is a tool. This technology is something that we have got to learn how to master. And if you think about how much in the infancy of this kind of technology we're in the smartphone generation, the information age, by barely 15 or 20 years. You realize what we were doing 20 years ago? You realize if COVID had happened 20 years ago, there was no Netflix. I mean, goodness gracious, that's all you got to say right there. Stop. COVID is done. We're all going to lose our minds because we don't have Netflix, right? Or YouTube, or Facebook, or Twitter, or Instagram. And we don't have live streaming. That was barely a thing in the early 2000s in 2003. You think about those times. But when I say this is a parenting issue much more than it is a technology issue, what I mean to say is that we need to stop blaming the technology and start looking at our parenting. We need to look at who we are being as parents first, and then we need to be able to teach our kids about this technology and guide them in how to use it. So before we say, well, it's the technology's fault, kids are watching too much TikTok or whatever like that. They're looking at their phones too much. Well, when you and I were growing up, our parents went, you know what they did when they needed to cook dinner, or when they needed to get laundry done, or when they needed to get something? Boom, right in front of the TV, right? You watch that, you watch VHS tapes, and you watch all this other stuff, right? You do all that kind of stuff. And it was the same kind of screen, except we've replaced the screen with something else these days. Just something to think about. The question for this first session, and basically for the entire seminar, is really, do you know what your children are doing? And how you answer that question is really important. Because if you kind of go, I know what they're doing, some stuff. I kind of know what they're doing. You're probably on the wrong side of it. But if you can say yes, and I doubt that I can't even say, I doubt that any of you could say, yes, I know everything that's going on my child's phone, my child's device, my child's computer. I know everything that they download. I know everything that they trip up on. I know everything. Unless we can really answer that in the affirmative. And again, we're going to make mistakes. Remember, we're going to have those things that we get tripped up on ourselves. And being parents, it is a full-time job. It is a full-time job added on to everything else that you've got to do to keep up with these kinds of things. My effort is to energize and encourage you today, not to beat you down. This first talk is a little beat down a little bit. It's a little bit wake up and smell the roses kind of thing. But the other sessions are designed to enlighten you, to prepare you, to energize you, and hopefully get you in tune to doing this. What we're going to hit today is the very tippy top of the iceberg. We're going to hit the 5 to 10% of the stuff that you need to know. Most of the iceberg is below water, though, and you've got to go home and you've got to do this, and you've got to put some of these things in practice. And you're doing some things, I guarantee you right now, that are working for you. And if you're doing those things at home and they're working for you, then there's no need to change what you're doing. But I want to hear from you today as we start to discuss those things, especially in sessions 2 and 3. Like Isaac said, this is the 79th workshop that I've done. This is the 79th different way that I've done it too. Because churches all want different things. They want different formats. They want me to talk about specific things. And that is not a problem at all. But every single one of these workshops has been different in some sort of way. So it has been a big blessing to me. I want to go to the Bible first. Psalm 127:1. And I've thought about this scripture quite a bit. Psalm 127:1 very simply says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. My dearly departed dad was a construction contractor, woodworker 40, 45, 50 years of his life. He could do anything with a piece of wood you give him credit for. He had a shop full of woodworking tools and all sorts of different things he had accumulated. I don't think I got those genes. I think that I got the gene that says if anything has a microchip on it, I can probably fix it. So I got another type of gene, I guess. But I got it in my head that I was going to build this little shelf for our Tuesday, Thursday school. We call it, can you imagine what days of the week they meet on? Tuesdays and Thursdays. They only do, it's a Mother's Day Out program at Graymere. They wanted one of these little shelves with the little holes in it and everything. And it has like little mail holes so they could stick envelopes in it and things like that. I said, man, I got my dad's tools, right? I can embody the spirit of Mac Landman and I can get to that, right? When I got done, the shelf was about yay big and it was kind of leaning to one side. And I just sat there and looked at it. I said, I spent 2 hours on this thing and wasted my time. I wasted my time because I didn't follow instructions. I didn't have an appropriate plan. And I didn't build with the end in mind. I didn't build with the final product in mind. And when I read Psalm 127:1, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. To me, that says that unless we build it with God, build our homes with God at the very centerpiece of everything that we're doing, then our homes are not worth building in the first place. And to me, an integral component to that is how we parent in the digital age. How are we going to parent as the first, second, third generation of parents to parent in this digital age? How are we supposed to do that when we sometimes don't know what we're doing? And frankly, sometimes we don't care what they're doing, right? So what are we supposed to do? Well, here's the thing. If we follow Scripture, if we follow what God says, and we keep Him at the centerpiece of everything, there's going to be a lot of things that fall into place naturally for us, but there's still going to be a lot of work that we have to do. The first thing I think that we need to realize is technology moves incredibly fast. I think you know that, but your kids move incredibly fast too, don't they? How many times have you come up in the last, 30 days? Has your kid come up to you and asked you to download something? Daddy, I want this. Mommy, I want this. Can you download this for me? Can you download it? And luckily, we've got it all set up, and we'll talk about that in the third session about how I've got it set up to where my kids can't download anything. And my kids are smaller, and so they don't have their own phones and their own devices yet. But for those of you who have teenagers who have their own devices that you don't have access to necessarily all the time, I'll be honest with you, I'm not looking forward to that because it is going to be a bear to figure out. Technology moves very fast. A couple of quotes here, and I love this one from Albert Mohler. He says, the digital age is upon us. In the span of less than 3 decades, we have redefined the way that humans communicate, entertain, inform, research, create, and that last one on the list is incredibly important, and connect. And what we know now is only a hint of what is to come. Now, that quote is really fantastic, but at the same time, it's really scary. Because we think about, oh man, he said this in 2016, 2017. And think about where things are going now. Think about things like the metaverse, things that we necessarily can't see what our kids are doing behind a VR helmet, right? I don't know if any of your kids have that kind of stuff going on yet, but that's something I hadn't even touched in digital parenting stuff yet. But it's by 2030, that's going to be one of those things that is commonplace, especially with teenagers and young adults. It's going to get more into technology is going to become less integrated into our lives. It's going to become more. And we need to understand how to not throw it out. We need to understand how to work with it and use it to our advantage. Remember this stuff? How many of you are older than 35 in here? Okay. Just about everybody. So if you think about it, when you wanted to look up a business, it wasn't on Google, right? Okay, I got to go to the top of the fridge because that's the only place that the big, huge yellow pages would fit, right? And I got to thumb through it and find out, okay, I got 18 listings for this. Which one? I got to find their phone number and stuff like that. Remember when you had computers like that? You'd have to go to the library to get on the internet. Oregon Trail. You have died of dysentery, right? Sorry. And that was about the only thing you could do. And when you got on the internet back in those days, you weren't watching videos. What were you doing? We thought it was so cool that we could instant message with our friends, right? AOL Instant Messenger. Remember that? I put America Online up there because I remember having a stack of CDs that they would just send people in the mail. I thought America Online was the internet. That's what a lot of us people, a whole generation of people grew up with. It wasn't. It was just a way to get on the internet, right? And then I mentioned something about payphones to a group of kids not several years ago. I was speaking at a youth retreat, I believe. And I told a story about payphones, and they just all were kind of like looking at me like, what are you talking about? Like a phone booth. Like you go in and put a quarter in a phone, and they go, like a prepaid phone? And I'm like, no. And they did not get it. And it just goes to show that in the span of, listen to that, 20 years, which is some of us, that's half of our life. Things have changed so dramatically. You see, our kids will never understand what it's like to not be constantly connected. We understand what that was like. We were the generation that would go off in the morning in the summertime and not come back till dinner. Well, we'd come back for lunch, but not come back till dinner or dark. We'd play outside all day. Didn't have a cell phone, didn't have a beeper, didn't have nothing like that, right? And we were fine. But when we think about this, our kids are they're going to have a device on them all the time, most of the time, if they're old enough. And they're going to be constantly connected. Think about this. YouTube came out in 2005, was bought by Google in 2007. Twitter came about in 2007. Facebook was 2004. I was the first person to sign up Freed-Hardeman because it was only colleges back then. I was the first person to sign up Freed-Hardeman, fall of 2004, sitting in my dorm room by myself, waiting on my roommates to arrive, signed up Freed-Hardeman for Facebook. That's crazy. And these things have only been around for 15 to 20 years, and we think they've become so ubiquitous in our lives, and we've become so dependent upon them that we don't even think about what life would be like without them now. Remember when something was on TV and you had to watch it when it came on TV? Remember, you could just go, I'll just record it. Well, do I have a tape to record it, right? Or can I tape over Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman? And is that okay, Mom? Can I tape over this? Just kind of thing. You remember what it was like, right? My mom would be, Sunday night, she would be ushering us out of the church building like galloping cats, herding cats. We got to go home. We can't miss Dr. Quinn. I didn't set the VCR. That's how it was, right? But now it's just like, I can just do that on my phone. Okay, I'm recording it now. And it's amazing. I heard a comedian one time, he said, everything is amazing and nobody is happy. It's kind of the truth. But think about your kids. Your kids will always be connected. And that, I wouldn't use the words, that's what we're fighting against. It's just, that's what we're up against. And the one difference I think that I see with kids in this generation, your kids that are anywhere from 8 to 18 years old, is that those kids are growing up in a generation where they're just naive. And we're the ones that grew up without this technology, and we don't tend to be that naive. So it's a very interesting age gap and generational gap for us here, especially with our children. I think the second thing we need to realize is that as parents, especially in 2023, we can never use the excuse that we didn't know. And I don't usually use the word never. Never is a long time. But we can never use that excuse. It's wonderful tax season, is it not? And I hear snickers and people laugh, but what I didn't understand in my first full year in ministry, almost 15 years ago, I didn't understand the implications of being a minister in taxes. I don't know if I just missed the day at class at Freed-Hardeman. If you talk to Isaac and you talk to Skylar, you talk to any of these guys in here that have to do ministers and taxes, it's a whole different deal. It's so strange and so weird. And when my accountant came up and he says, so you owe $4,000. I said, what? And I said, we've been married for 8 months. $4,000 might as well be $4 million. I don't got it. And how do you think the IRS responded to that? Where they say, oh, you didn't know. So sorry, right? We'll just let you have another year to pay it off. No, they said, we'll be happy to set up a payment plan for you, Mr. Landman. Right? And I couldn't just go, well, I didn't know. The information was out there for me to find. Tax code was out there, ministers and taxes. There are plenty of tax attorneys, tax people that do ministers and taxes, right? But the simple fact was, I tried to say, well, I didn't know. As parents, we're not going to have the luxury when something happens with our children to go, well, I didn't know. Well, I didn't know that app did that. Well, I didn't know it was deleted after a certain amount of time. Well, I didn't know she was on that social network, or I didn't know he was sending those pictures. I'm stepping on your toes right now, but I'm sorry. That is not an excuse that we're going to be able to use, because we can fight fire with fire. We have the exact tools and knowledge at our fingertips that we need to do everything that we can. It has never been easier to be a parent in the digital age than right now. And I hope to illustrate that to you the rest of the day. You don't have to worry about Windows PCs and all this other stuff that you had to figure out, Covenant Eyes on PCs and Macs and things like that. You don't have to worry. You got probably one device that you've got to worry about with your kids, maybe two, maybe a school notebook and things like that. But there are so many easy ways. If you type in parenting on a certain device into YouTube or into Google, you can find exactly the information that you need. So again, education is the key. I think about, and I always try to tie in scripture when I'm thinking about these things, but I think about Matthew 18, verse 6 quite a bit. Let's start in verse 5. He says, Jesus is talking and he says, whoever receives one such child in my name, he's talking about children, receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believes in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. You may glaze over that scripture and you may say, oh, well, he didn't know what he was talking about, right? Well, he absolutely knew what he was talking about. Jesus is saying that it is a incredibly serious thing to enable a child to sin. And that's what we're doing. If we give our child a phone or an iPad or an Android tablet that doesn't have any kind of protections, doesn't have any boundaries set, doesn't have any parental controls or any parental control apps set on it, we're asking for it. And so again, we have to make sure that we're doing that. And I understand we get lax all the time with doing these different things and we don't check up on them. And we've got to start doing that. We've got to be better about that. The picture I've got up here is a holding hands. You know, I'm getting to the point where I've got a bigger boy who's in middle school, but I've also got little boys who still like to hold my hands. But my big boy in middle school, as we're walking into his 5th grade orientation, I said, Jacob, do you want to hold my hand across the parking lot? And he goes, no, Daddy, I'm in 5th grade now. And I went, just absolutely broke my heart, right? But when we do that with our smaller kids, we hold their hands in every part of their lives, don't we? Don't look both ways before you cross the street. Don't come back here in the parking lot. Don't get out of the car without me. This is a busy parking lot. Don't put your hand on the stove. Don't touch that. Don't do this. And we guide them all sorts of ways. We have to guide them through these as well in this digital technology. We have to hold their hands a little bit. We cannot just throw them off the deep end in an Olympic-sized swimming pool and hope they can swim. When I think about, guiding my kids, I think about my middle son, David. My middle son, David, let's be honest, y'all, he's a middle child So he does whatever he wants to do. And he's a little boy and he's 8 years old. And when you can look at that boy and put the fire from your eyes and say, come here, and he'll just smile and run the opposite direction. Okay. That's how he is. He's a little boy and he's learning, and he's going to learn a whole lot in the next few years, I feel. But why would I take my little boy David maybe out to a park that's right out here? Nashville Highway, right? Right out here on Nashville Highway, semis going by, all sorts of stuff, Lewisburg and back up to Franklin, all sorts of stuff. And there's no fence out here that's been put up with a playground. And I just let him go out there and I don't pay attention to what he's doing. And I just hope that he's going to be okay. That's crazy, right? No parent would do that. So why do we do it with these things? Why do we give children these things and go, yeah, they'll know. They're not naive. They'll know the difference and they know exactly what they're doing on these things. They don't. Don't ever assume, even your older teenagers, don't ever assume that they know what they're doing. We have to guide them. Proverbs 29:15. I think a lot about the rod and reproof give wisdom. We always quote that, right? Say, oh yeah, you're going to be discipline your child and stuff like that. Yeah, I get that. But the second part of that verse is very interesting. But a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. We need to be listening to our kids too. Because if we're not listening to them, they're going to find somebody who will. I've seen it in so many different instances. I've been contacted by so many different kinds of parents that say, my kid got into this, my kid got into this, they got into this, now they're in prison, now they're doing this, now they're serving time, all this other stuff. It's bananas. You do not want your kids to be part of that statistic. So again, we must hold their hands, educate them just like we would educate them on anything else. We bring them to church every Sunday. How about every Monday, every Friday, you talk about what you did on your phones all week? Just an idea. A couple of statistics for you. I know this session runs a tad long, but it's really kind of laying the groundwork for us. About 1.9 billion sites on the internet. That's just sites. That's not pages. There are trillions of pages, but 1.9 billion .coms, .nets, .orgs. There's about 68 million dedicated to nudity or pornography. Now, we can pick on nudity and pornography because it's the easiest thing in the world to pick on, because it's everywhere. You might have heard that 6%, 5 to 6% of the entire internet is pornography. That would be an astronomical number. That's not correct. This is more like 0.05%. Now, again, you look at those numbers, and that's pretty big. 68 million sites. Well, that's pretty big. That's still not the number that you need to be concerned with, though. This is 1 in 5. That's 20%. 1 in 5 searches made on a mobile device, an iPhone, an iPad, an Android phone, are for some type of pornography. And if you think that your sons are the only ones that are going to struggle with this, you would be wrong. Because an ever-increasing amount of girls, young ladies, are struggling with pornography as well. In fact, the numbers have kind of seesawed in a girl's direction, where it's more like 53%, 47% girls are now struggling with pornography more than boys are. That's amazing to me. Amazingly bad. A couple of really smart people, adolescents who view pornography. They feel shame, they feel diminished self-confidence, and sexual uncertainty. When our kids watch TV shows these days, there's a good chance that they're going to see some type of representation of a relationship that we do not agree with, that the Bible does not agree with, that we do not want them to understand is normal, but society tries to pull off as being completely normal. This is how completely normal people live, with 2 moms and 2 dads, right? But we know it's not. And we don't need our kids being more sexually uncertain in this sexually uncertain kind of world, do we? So most definitely, they don't need to be obviously looking at any type of pornography or anything that comes close to that. There's a significant relationship between social media use at too early of an age and feelings of loneliness, including major depression in adolescence. We're talking about major depression in 13 to 18-year-old young men and young women. Depressive symptoms, diagnosable depressive symptoms. That to me is crazy. When you think about social media use at too early of an age, I don't know what you're thinking about, what you think about how early of an age should I give my child social media? What age should I let them have it? When they get a phone, should they have it? I don't know what you think. Every child is different. Donna Hughes here says, parents are the weak link in the chain when it comes to protecting their children. Sometimes we're the link in that chain that's broken. And if you try to pull something with that chain, it's going to break right there. Average age of first exposure to internet pornography or any kind of nudity on a screen is 8 years old. It's trending downward to 7.5 very, very quickly. In fact, I think it's already probably at 7.5. I need to update my slide. You have any idea what the average there was 10 years ago? Anyone want to take a guess? 11. Now, I don't know if you think about that, but when you do the math, that is a very, very big shift in just a decade. Why do you think that shift happened? Access. It's basically when we've got everything, all the information in our hands. We have the world's knowledge in the palm of our hands. We can see anything, we can do anything we want, watch anything we want in the palm of our hands. 94% of children ages 8 to 18 have seen nudity on their screens, most while doing homework. Why is that most while doing homework on there? When do you want your child to get their homework done? Anybody? Do you want them to get it done right before bedtime? No. When do you want it to get done? Right when they get home, right? So it's done, it's out of the way, we don't have any surprises, you're not getting into bed and suddenly the child says, oh, I got to do this homework. No, we don't want that, right? Especially with young children. But when kids have homework and they're doing it increasingly online and the parents are still at work until 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30, the number one time for a child to get in trouble on the internet, 2 times, 4 p.m. and 1:30 to 2 a.m. Those are the top times that kids will seek out, get in trouble with things on the internet, things on their phones, on their tablets. And again, just goes to show how important it is. 87% of sexual solicitations are made to youth in chat apps. There's not guys hanging around the parks anymore. There's not creepers hanging around wanting to catch your children in unmarked white vans, with no windows. There's none of that stuff going on anymore. They don't have to go any farther than some of these social media apps to track down your child. It's scary. 67%, 7 out of 10 almost, admit to clearing a browser history in order to hide internet usage or YouTube watch history or who they're following on Instagram or who they've seen on TikTok. 7 out of 10 kids will admit to clearing that kind of history so that you don't find out. And again, I'm not trying to say that you have bad kids because I know that by being here by default, you have good kids because you're concerned and you're motivated and you're involved. What I'm worried about is the other people's kids. I'm worried about everybody, all the other parents' kids who don't care anything about Jesus or the Bible or God or being good or moral. And they just let their kids do whatever. That's the kids I'm concerned about influencing your kids. Something to think about. This is interesting. I've added this in the last year or so. Social media use combined with depressive symptoms levels in teens is up 18% in 14 to 22-year-olds just since March of 2020. You realize the average per year before COVID was just 3% per year. Still staggering, but the average was 3%, and it's up 18% in the last 18 months. That should tell us something. One of the most humbling things that I'd ever had get a part of was the first workshop that I did in North Carolina after COVID happened. It was like, I think it was in January 2021. And there was a group of kids that had heard me the night before really badmouth Snapchat and TikTok. And they had got banded together and planned out their defense, not in a bad or disrespectful way. They were going to approach me and say, Mr. Landman, we believe that this is a good communication tool for us because A, B, C, D, E, whatever. But I didn't let them do that at all because I knew what was going on. So I scrapped my talk. I scrapped everything I was going to talk about. And I put a chair right in front of them. There's 40 teenagers sitting there. And I put a chair right in front of them. And I said, tell me what y'all have been dealing with for the past 12 months. And that was one of the most enlightening hours of my entire life for digital parenting. We got to listen to our kids. It's really hard on them. It's much harder on them than it was for us. We didn't have to deal with all this stuff. We didn't have to deal with all this stuff on the phone. It's much harder for them. Now, again, that does not make us want to go crying and, oh, why they got it so bad and everything like that. We need to do our due diligence as parents to make sure that we're doing what we can to protect our children. We are, let me just say this. We are our children's protectors first, not their friends. We can be their friends later. We are their protectors first. God has entrusted us with that child. God knew that you were going to be the perfect parent for that child. That's why he gave him to you. So again, that's incredibly important, I think, for me to say, to think about these things. We got to be sensitive, but at the same time, we also got to put our foot down on these certain issues. Middle school is the worst time for any kind of child to get any kind of social media. Your middle schooler does not need to be on any form of social media. And in case you didn't get that, your middle schooler does not need to be on any form of social media. You know why? And I say that jokingly, but you know why? Because it's been proven over and over again. It's the worst kind of thing that they can deal with. You don't even need to think about letting your child do anything until 9th grade at minimum. Now, that's not necessarily give them a phone. I know plenty of parents that have given children phones in 5th, 6th, 7th grade. And if you lock it down appropriately and it's just a texting and calling machine, then that's great. But don't let them on social media, please. There's a campaign out there right now called Wait Until 8th. I even say wait until 9th. I'm a little bit cautious. But it's this whole thing you've probably seen on Facebook. It's called Wait Until 8th. They have some really good ideas about some stuff, so you should definitely look them up. The third thing, and I know we're going a little long, we'll get through it here. The third thing we need to realize is that privacy is an illusion. The tech companies, they do not care about your data. They do not care about your well-being. They do not care about your child's well-being. Somebody tell me what they do care about. Money. Whether they're in the black or not. Whether they're making whether they're impressing shareholders or not, right? And I could go through we could talk about this the rest of the afternoon, but I wouldn't bore you with all that kind of stuff. But when I do think about trying to hide, whether it's ourselves or whether it's our children trying to hide usage from us, I use this all the time when I'm talking to kids. When I talk about Hebrews 4:13 says we're going to all be naked and exposed to him whom we must give an account. The actual scripture says, no creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him whom we must give an account. No creature is hidden from his sight. We need to be teaching our kids, nothing is private. When you have this device, somebody knows what you're doing at all times. We may be able to hide everything that we do on this device from our church family, from our place of work, from our ball team, from our spouse, from all sorts of different things, from wherever it is. You could even go to extremes and be able to hide stuff from the government. Nobody can hide from the government. They know everything there is about us. The FBI, the best thing that ever happened to the FBI was the iPhone. Okay? And I'm not joking about that. But you know who you can't hide it from? The Lord God Almighty. And when we get our kids to see that perspective, when we get our kids to see when you're typing out a message with on that tiny little keyboard with your thumbs, it's the same thing as you saying it out loud. When we get them to understand that fully, when we get them to understand that God sees and is going to judge us by everything that we say and that we do and all of our sins and transgressions, but everything that we type out on a phone too. Kids have this block. They say, well, I can be whoever I want to on this device, and and that's not true. We need to help them realize that. And that's hard. That's challenging because it's going to be different for every child. I talk to kids, I say, it's about the bucket of feathers. You take a bucket of feathers out on a windy day, those feathers are going to go everywhere. They're going to go up in the bushes. They're going to go up in the air. And you're never going to get all those feathers back in that bucket. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Once you put something out on the web, even if it's private, encrypted, see, kids buy into that. They see private and they see encryption and they see all these things and they think, well, I can just say anything I want to. And that is absolutely not true. And we've been proving that over and over and over again. We have to help them understand that once those feathers are out of the bucket, they're out. What can you do? We're at the end of this session here. I wanted to end on a positive note and give you a couple of different suggestions for that. Because I'm also sometimes a preacher, I guess I have to have an acronym for things, right? So we're going to do the old school, just, acronym, right? And the acronym is SPEED, okay? The first one is START, okay? And I've got all of these on my website, or I will have all of these on my website. This is a brand new presentation that I built. You guys are the first ones for it, by the way. I will have all these on my website this week, and so I'll send Isaac that link, and he can share it with everybody. But of course, you need to start. Now, this is probably a step that you've already done, but you might not have done specific things. Make a list of devices in your home that connect to the internet. Do this every 6 months. I just get out an old legal pad and I just put a line down the middle and I list every device in my home that can access the internet. On that right column, I put what kind of parental controls are enabled on those devices. And you know what? Every time, even me being the tech nerd person that I am, even every time it surprises me, I'm like, I forgot about that. I didn't know we still had that. We got an old iPhone in a drawer. Who knew that? Who knew about that? But you know what? My 11-year-old probably knew about it. He probably wanted to go in there and find it, and he couldn't get it to work because it's so old. It uses the old charger. He couldn't figure it out, right? And so again, when we think about it, you need to enable parental controls and filters on those things. You need to set up family sharing on iOS, on iPhones if you have them. Screen time on those things. Screen time is your number one friend on iPhones. On Android phones, digital well-being is your number one friend. You don't have to go and download, and we're going to talk about this in depth in the third session, but you don't have to go and download all these exotic parental control apps and pay, dozens of dollars a month. You don't have to do that quite yet. Because if you can find what you need to find built in on the devices, they're actually pretty good now. They used to not be, but they're actually really good now. So start. The second one is plan. This one, it starts to get a little bit more complex and difficult because you have to think about with your child, what is a long-term plan for digital parenting? This is going to look different for every child. My 11-year-old is going to be treated very much differently than my 8-year-old. I can see that already. My 6-year-old was tested, and he's going to be in a gifted program at his elementary school. We're excited about that. But I'm not excited about how he's going to get around my parental controls and all that stuff because he's going to be so smart, right? And so again, this looks different for every child. What age are they going to have their first device? What age are they going to have their own phone? You need to plan these things ahead of time. And you've heard the phrase, failure to plan is a plan to fail. You don't have to put it. I know a lady at Graymere has that plan on a poster board on her refrigerator. And I'm like, you don't have to quite do that. But you at least need to have it, those rules and everything and have those rules written up front for your kids to apply by. Okay. This one, again, the levels of complexity, it just gets a little bit harder with every step. Enforce those rules when you have to. Don't let kids go to bed with phones. That's a hard one. Supervise directly when and if you can. Again, if you have teenagers that are on the go constantly, that's incredibly difficult. My recommendation is to take your child's device, their physical, take it in your hands, know their password at random intervals, have physical access to it. Check and make sure there aren't any devices that you don't know about. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth in session 3 as well. There are certain Wi-Fi systems that you can put in your home to alert you to new devices that connect to your Wi-Fi that will not allow them to access the internet if you don't know what they are. You can just sit there on your phone and go, nope, and hit no, and it's taken care of. If your child comes home with a phone that they bought for $20 off of some weirdo at their school, right? They're not going to be able to get on the internet with it, at least down at your house. And they're most certainly not going to be able to go buy a cell phone plan for it, right? Because I have to sell a kidney to get a cell phone plan for those kinds of things, right? It's crazy the amount of information you got to give these cell phone companies now. It's like buying a car. So again, they're not going to be able to do that. But again, enforce. The second E there is encourage. This is where we take a positive turn here. A couple of things you can do. Use your device in black and white mode when you don't want to pay attention to it. This goes for parents as well as kids. This is one of those things that I talk about in my addiction. I have a talk on cell phone addiction and specific things like that. And turns out if you use your phone in black and white mode, there's some settings that you can go into settings and use that. Turns out it tricks your brain into thinking that it's not nearly as appealing as it is. Think if you went to Vegas or Times Square and everything was black and white. You'd be like, oh, it's kind of neat, I guess. Colors make all the difference. It wasn't until color TVs went into high production that television really took off and skyrocketed in the 60s and early 70s. It's all because of color. Color makes all the difference. So if you can try, I've got a shortcut on my phone. I can tap my phone 3 times on the back and it turns it to black and white. And it's really neat to do because it does trick your brain, especially when I go on vacation and stuff, or when I get home every night at about 4:30, I do, and I tap it, and it's black and white, and that makes it less appealing for me to want to sit there and just do the endless scroll, right? Notifications, turn those off. That's one of the best things I think you can do. I have not actually, believe it or not, I have not actually heard anybody's vibrating phone or notifications this whole time. May have just missed it, but that's pretty fascinating. Encourage your kids to leave their device behind. You have to be part of that as well. So you have to kind of untether yourself. But what I've talked to younger kids, I've talked to early teenage kids right now that are starting to realize that they're addicted to these cell phones and that we all are. They want you to give them a reason to leave their phones behind. They want to be able to tell their friends, well, my dad made me leave it at home. So they want to be able to do that. And so give them the opportunity to just unchain themselves from that from time to time. Encourage them that they don't have to be on it constantly. Make family time at home. Make 1-2 nights a week, make them leave their phones upstairs, whatever. Okay. Last one here, I'd say demand holiness and obedience. 1 Peter 2:9, of course, calls us, we are the called out. We are the ones that have been called. Live a life worthy of the calling that we have received. If we have been called by God to do that, then it needs to permeate every single bit of our Christian walk, including raising our kids, including digital parenting. Any comments, thoughts before we take a quick break? That was a lot of stuff, right? That's a talk I've been tweaking for 8 years, y'all. We're going to get into social media next. On my watch, I have 3:27. So let's be back here at 3:35 if we could. And then we'll get to the second session. Thank y'all very much.